of any foreign any whether local or foreign firms that are into financial technology trading in stocks, foreign exchange and all of that, without appropriate licenses. That really was the bone of contention that we saw yesterday. It set Nigerians into a panic mode because lots of Nigerians actually invest on those platforms. They trade on the NSC, they trade on the US stock exchange and all of that. But what we've seen is these companies, we've seen Bamboo, Thrive, we've seen Rise as well, Rise Vest, we've seen Chaka, a couple of these other companies coming out to say that, your money is safe with us and that even if our accounts are frozen, the funds are being managed by third-party organizations that are in the US and Nigeria. So hopefully, this, is resolved because, like Mr. Akimbola said yesterday, it's now up to these financial technology companies to go ahead and, make their case that they can file for a stay of execution and, prove why their account should not be frozen and states if, according to them, their dealings have been legal so far, But what this just reminds us of is how Nigerians complain that it seems that the federal government, has been making laws that seem to be clamping down on startups, on fintechs, young Nigerians who try to create innovative solutions to, problems, especially in the financial sector. But that really is where we are.
Yeah, and I agree. To be honest, I think the narrative is pretty much the same thing. And I haven't seen a lot of people who have said, "Oh, we totally support what the CBN has done or what the court ruling, says." There's more people who have seen this as, once again, a clampdown on the growth of other, ways that Nigerians have, sourced, a living for themselves. There's a lot of things that should have been put into consideration before, this court order. How these companies will survive for the next 6 months. They have staff that they need to pay. You're very likely going to be sending a few more people back into the labor market. Sure. Those things weren't considered, and, I said it yesterday that, my challenge really is the way that, the Nigerian government acts, every now and then, pretty much the same thing when Twitter was banned, and almost the same thing when, the Forex, trading by BDCs also, took place. That ruling, also took place. There's also pretty much similar with when Go-Kada was banned here in Lagos. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of consideration into other, aspects on a particular issue when they take these decisions. It feels like a knee-jerk reaction every single time. And so when people say that, it feels like the Nigerian government continues to strangulate or to, put a chokehold on, businesses that are thriving or that seem to be thriving, mm-hmm. You really can't fault them, or fault that narrative. Because what exactly, necessitates them being frozen for 6 months? They can't be frozen for 6 months. Anybody, should try to make, this, easier to understand. If you need to investigate, we have had 8,000,000,001 cases where the government acts in this way, where instead of you to do a proper investigation, instead of you to say, okay, well, we've seen, it seems like you may have been going against, some of the rules that CBN has put in place and, send out warnings, send out letters to these fintech companies, and things like that. Instead of that, we take very, very drastic steps and go to a court that, of course, would simply go ahead and give a 6-month ban on fintechs, or not ban on fintechs, but freeze their accounts for 6 months. Very much the same thing, just like I said yesterday with the Nigerian police not wanting to investigate properly before making an arrest. Once you simply look like you may have some money in your account, you are arrested. And then after arrest, then you go to the station to find out why you've been arrested, or then they start to look through your phone to find out reasons why they arrested you. So at the time when these decisions are taken, it's not like they have 100% proof of what, their claims are, but they take these decisions. And why, does a judge not see through these things? I mean, how help anybody understand why any court in Nigeria doesn't see through these things, or at least, think otherwise, before taking a decision like this and freezing accounts of these companies for 6 months? Like our guest has said, and of course, one of the things that we mentioned yesterday is that they can counter or they can, challenge this ruling and, hope that they can get a stay of execution and, continue their business until they settle issues with the CBN. Whether it will affect businesses, obviously a lot of people are going to be trying to pull out their money because they feel unsafe with what is going on. There's also going to be something that I read yesterday was someone saying that they might put out these statements reassuring their customers that there's nothing to be afraid of. But you wouldn't also be surprised if after 2-3 weeks it starts to become difficult to withdraw money or to do certain transactions on these apps or these through these platforms. It just doesn't in any way look good, and that's the truth. One point, and I shouldn't miss out on saying this. One point that was made as one of the reasons why this was or this decision was taken, why the accounts were frozen, was that they apparently are contributing to the devaluing of the naira. It says that they, let's see if I can quickly find it. They contribute to making the naira weaker than the dollar. These 4 companies that are just about 4 years old are suddenly, one of the reasons why the naira is weaker. Bearing in mind, or simply forgetting that Nigerians spend, let me quickly share it with you. Nigerians spend about $1 billion annually on medical tourism. And do you know the reason why they spend $1 billion on medical tourism? It's simply because there's no good enough healthcare here in Nigeria. True. Nigeria also spends about $9.01 billion on foreign travels in 2019, and that's with regards healthcare. And $4.55 billion on education travel also in 2019. So this is, how billions and billions of dollars, are spent in, other countries or are sourced because of education and healthcare. Because of the failed system that we have here, it's very likely not because of these 4 companies. It is mostly because of the fact that a lot of things aren't working here. And also, we've been making mouth about diversifying our economy for so many years now. The economy is going to be diversified. We're going to have, other, source of income for the country. We're not going to be solely dependent on oil and some of all of that. Nothing seems to be different, from what it was 10 years ago than it is today. And so you cannot blame these 4 companies for making the naira weaker than the dollar.
Okay, so I think one question we need to critically look at is why in the first place does Nigerians, why do Nigerians go ahead to invest in foreign stocks? You need to really take a look at that situation, because that's the reason why, that's one of the reasons why these companies were created, to ensure that Nigerians especially get an opportunity to invest in foreign stocks. You see that there's a perception regarding the NSE, the Nigerian Stock Exchange, that it's only for the elites and the super rich, that can invest in the NSE. You also see, first of all, Nigeria's dwindling economy. Our current economic realities is so bad, so bleak. And then you see that it then seems that the devaluation of the naira makes people feel that it's easier to have assets in foreign currencies and things like that. So if you fix your economy, the economy is functioning properly. Who's to say that other countries will not want to invest in our stock exchange, and get stocks in naira? But if the economy is weak and people are trying to find their way out to ensure that the value of the asset do not depreciate over time because of inflation and all of that, who are you to blame them? But that's where we are regarding this. Let's take a look at our next big story here. And this is something we hear, many times, and it's about the Amotekun, right? When the Amotekun came up, first of all, I think it's called the Tiger. It's code name, the Tiger. That's what it means in Yoruba. And they said this was to provide regional security for the Southwest. There were lots of opposition to this, but eventually they went on with that. It was inaugurated. They trained some people. Lots of back and forth regarding whether they should carry arms or not. But the thing is, we've heard time and time again about extrajudicial killings by the Amotekun Corps. And right now, there was a particular situation like that. And the person in question here is a 14-year-old boy. His name is Peter Okafor. So what the story says is that in the Oyo capital of Ibadan, Amotekun Corps said they were allegedly chasing an armed robber, and some stray bullets hit this 14-year-old boy. I mean, that's what the eyewitnesses say. But when you know, the Amoteku Corps spokesman spoke about this, the state commander of Amoteku, Olayinka Olayoju. He said that the Amoteku is not responsible for Peter's death. He said that Amoteku operatives were nowhere near the scene of the crime, nowhere near the scene of the incident, that they were only deployed in Alaro community around Songo by 1 a.m. after they received a distress call of an armed robbery attack, and that they were never near the vicinity where Peter Okafor died. But people who were there when this happened said they saw Amoteku members, you know, fire bullets that hit this Peter Okafor guy. And the issue here is that they're now protesting the burning tires on the roads, causing, you know, traffic jam on the roads, saying that they would not tolerate, you know, members of Amoteku Corps going ahead to, you know, kill people. And if we're even going to talk about the stray bullets, is it that they were not trained regarding how to aim? I mean, you should be trained in, you know, how to handle weapons. Because how long will we continue to hear stories about a Nigerian being killed by a stray bullet? If the police is trying to aim at a threat, don't they know how to aim? Why do we keep having stories of Nigerians being killed by stray bullets? I think that's just a shame on the skill, so to speak, or the training of these law enforcement agencies. And then it seems that these Amoteku guys have really grown some wings if these stories of extrajudicial killings are true.
Well, those who are trained also, you know, misfire every now and then. The stray bullet incidents, you know, didn't start with Amoteku. It started with Nigerian police force, which you expect that, you know, are properly trained to handle weapons, you know, in every regard. I think we also brought up something yesterday that I was asking about the value of the Nigerian life and who should take responsibility. That is with the Lagos State Task Force and accusations that they also, you know, caused the death of a person, a driver here in Nigeria. So it's not, you know, it's pretty much in the same space, you know, the value of the Nigerian life, and if anybody will truly be questioned or be arrested or be made to pay, you know, for the loss of this particular life. There's also a video clip that I had seen a couple of days ago of someone being tortured, you know, by, you know, same Amoteku Corps. And, you know, what for me this really is that, you know, it just tells me that something I've always known, that if you give a Nigerian some level of power, they very likely, so 80% chance they very likely would use it in oppressing the next Nigerian. You can see that attitude in the smallest gate man or smallest security guard. In any bank or in any office across Lagos, across Nigeria, as long as you're giving him a uniform, he automatically, you know, starts to feel like he can oppress the next person who he feels is beneath him. And it's almost a Nigerian attitude, and you see it everywhere. So that's pretty much the same thing with Amoteku. And one of the fears that, you know, were mentioned when they were being set up, people were asking and saying that we hope that they don't now start to take laws into their hands, or they don't now go beyond the control of the Oyo state government or any, you know, state in the southwest where they are functional. They obviously seem to be, you know, taking these laws into their hands or going beyond, you know, their jurisdiction or going beyond what is expected of them. Amoteku has no business with torturing anybody. They have no business whatsoever. There are certain, you know, cases that you really should be leaving for the police. They are not meant to be walking around the streets looking for petty thieves.
I remember when they were formed, there were you know, there were talks about them, you know, being formed to ensure regional security against killer herders. Yeah, that's how would they now go ahead chasing robbers is something I don't understand.
Well, you know, so yes, that's the reason they were formed. But you would also expect that in times of, you know, crimes being committed, if there's a robbery and they're somewhere around, then maybe they can also step in and assist the Nigerian police because of the inadequacies of the Nigerian police. But there obviously needs to be a lot more done with regards to controlling their excesses. They have no business with torture. They have no business with, you know, shooting, you know, at, you know, suspected
kids?
Criminals. Even if it wasn't a kid, you know, that they were firing.
I mean, this particular guy, Peter Okafor, he was supposed to, you know, take WAEC exams, and now his...
Yeah, you know, so the point is, regardless if it was, you know, an 80-year-old man or a 14-year-old kid, you know, there's obviously a lot of control that needs to be put in with regards the mode of operation of Amoteku. You know, they should know where, you know, their boundaries, you know, are and what things are that they should be able to do and not do. after beating around the bush, we can still call these allegations because nobody is 100% sure exactly, if they are guilty here. But after all of this is said and done, it's now left for the Oyo State government to do everything possible to ensure that justice is served to that life that was lost and to that family who has lost a family member, whoever it is that is responsible. If it is an Amotekun member, if it is the court that needs to be suspended for a bit, if it is the court that needs to be a member of the court needs to be disciplined, something must be done. And in the lack of a society that is just and fair to its citizens, there will continue to be chaos, regardless of where it's coming from, whether it's ESN or it's Amotekun or it is Hisba in the north. There would continue to be chaos if these people cannot at least
all right. Just a correction there. The Amotekun, yes, it's actually the translation of leopard, yes, not tiger. And also, Nigeria has secured the first gold medal at the World Under-20 Athletics Championship. Great news. Team Nigeria won that first gold at the 4x400 meters relay in Kenya, in Nairobi. And the Nigerians that made this happen for us are Chidera Namani, Deborah Oke, Ima Bong, and Bamidele. They claimed this gold with a championship record for Nigeria on Wednesday. And they also made history as the first winners of the event at the World Under-20 Championship, beating Poland and India.
Congratulations to them. And once again, there's so much more that we can achieve if we have better environments to develop these talents, better funding, to also develop these talents. There's so much. Nigeria is very likely the most talented, the country that has most talents in the whole of Africa. I'm not even going to say just West Africa, the whole of Africa. Nigerians are extremely talented in every single field that you can imagine. They just need a place to thrive and need an environment that really can support them and support these talents to grow. So congratulations to them. Hopefully they get to make it to the bigger stage and maybe also contest in the next Olympics or World Athletics, the next athletics championships.
Indeed. Congratulations again to the team Nigeria. We'll take a break here and return with Off the Press. Stay with us.
Hello and welcome. It's Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime. Nimasa This Week is brought to you by the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. Statutorily mandated to ensure that there is regulation and promotion of matters affecting our waters. NIMASA bears responsibility for search and rescue, shipping development, and ship registration.
NIMASA This Week, the voice of maritime, showing on this channel.
Politics has helped shape the decision of the polity, from conspiracy theories to good old-fashioned comic politics.
These are the results of tomorrow's election. Okay, you have it already, Abi.
I am not hungry. If I need appointment, all I need to do is to start praising government.
Plus, politics will fill the polls of the country, from friends to frenemies, even strange bedfellows, to clones and stooges. We go beyond the rhetorics and the drama to analyze the story behind the story.
Let anybody come and say.
The moment we stop having charlatans occupy political offices, we will curtail hate speech.
Plus Politics, not just another political show. It's about putting you, the citizens, in the know.
Nigeria's Niger Delta region, from where the black gold fuels Africa's largest economy, where the lines between wealth and poverty has never been thinner. Conflicts, poverty, insecurity, and environmental challenges daily confront the region. How can the Niger Delta story be changed for the better?
Join Mamude Akuga at 9 p.m. every Friday evening on PlusTvAfrica as he probes deep in search of solutions.
Inside the Niger Delta with Mamode Akuga, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region.
Welcome back to the breakfast on Plus TV Africa. It's now time for Off the Press, and let's say hello to our guest, Mr. Inye Tok, a public affairs analyst. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Morning. Always my pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Let's start with the Punch newspapers. Headline says, Petroleum Industry Act. States tackle federal government today as Federal Account Allocation Committee meets. NBA advises governors. We'll review the law at FAAC today and disclose our position. That's according to Benue Commissioner. NBA, Ozekome tells state governments to challenge Petroleum Industry Act in court. Above that headline, it reads, World Bank, AFDB, others to fund 4.89 trillion naira budget deficit. Call for self-defense. ACF, Middle Belt, back Masari, Ohaneze flees government. Sokapu, false arms ban. And Sokapu says they will challenge Southern Governor's arms ban in court. IT investments dropped by $53 million in 1 year. PIA full implementation in 2022. Nigeria loses $50 billion investments. Lalong begs warring groups, gunmen kill 5, 4 missing. FEC approves 658 million naira for sniper dogs. Education, others, 21 billion naira. Doctor strike, NMA meets NAD Friday. Patients resort to self-care. We also see APC releases timetable for September 4 local government congresses. And Oyo youth protest WASSC candidates killing, blame Amocheko. All
right. Now moving on to the Daily Independent. Big story you can see there says, expect benefits of Petroleum Industry Act from 2023, says the FIRS. Targets 10.104 trillion naira revenue in 2022. Says Twitter, Facebook coming into tax net. Uncertainty, underinvestment in oil industry gone. And that's from President Buhari. OK Steering Committee on Petroleum Industry Act says host communities will get real, lasting benefits. Police deploy 1,000 for Oluwari's Saturday coronation. And flood hits 32 states, says Buhari chides governors for ignoring warning. APC fixes local government area congresses for September 4th. On COVID-19, Oshimbajo harps on need for innovation and action in vaccine manufacturing. We are working to regulate social media, says Minister. And also court rejects AGF, DSS plea to dismiss Sunday Igboho's suit, says restraining order still subsists. The Auditor General is in the news this morning saying 4.973 trillion naira missing from Federation account. Also, FEC OK's 658 million naira for deployment of dogs to Lagos, Abuja airports. Okay, all right, those are the stories on the Daily Independent.
Let's turn to the Nation newspaper. Buhari, $50 billion investment lost in 10 years without oil sector law. Silver's implementation panel on PIA gets 12-month mandate. Declare Boni-led caretaker panel illegal, APC chief tells court. APC Council Congresses for September 4. Gunmen kill 17 in Zamfara, Plateau States, 50 abducted. Court turns down government's request to dismiss Igboho's suit. Gunmen attack empty bullion van in Ondo. NNPC targets ventures in gas-fired 5,000 megawatts. FEC approves 21.11 billion naira for aviation, education, others contracts. And also, Unilag reopens. Those are the stories on the Nation newspaper.
The Daily Trust comes up next. Doubts trail surrender of Boko Haram members. Repentant fighters could be deceptive, says traditional ruler. We will not forgive them, IDPs and residents say, and also we are sure they are insurgents, Defense Headquarters. Bandits kill 7 Nigerian soldiers, 3 villagers, abduct 17 others in Katsina. NNPC partners sign 50 megawatts Maiduguri Power Project pact. And fear grips Zamfara communities as new armed group emerges. Despite dropping inflation rate, prices of goods and foodstuff on the rise. 2 years after, constituents lament as fate of 14 Edo lawmakers-elect hangs, and Buhari to attend son's wedding as activities begin in Bichi today. All right, those are the stories we can take on the Daily Trust. Good morning, Mr. Nyaya Tok. Thanks for joining us once again.
Good morning once again, and always a pleasure to be on PlusTvAfrica.
Good to see you. I think we can start with the one on the Daily Independent from the Auditor General saying 4.973 trillion naira missing from the Federation account.
You know, some of these things I find it difficult to know where to start from. Why would government always come up with all these figures to the public? Is it that they have no idea of what to do, in the sense that if something is missing, my common sense tells me that the first thing you do is call the necessary investigating officers. When that's been done, we take the second step of trying to ascertain if this is a crime or if it is a mistake. If it is a mistake, we carry out institutional, correctional, dynamics. We activate it. If it's a crime, we call in the prosecuting agencies. And what we should be hearing is that these people have been jailed on account of these, then they can tell us the actions that they took. That, in my opinion, is what governance is all about. But when you come to the floor of the House or come to the nation and tell them that, oh, this amount of money is missing, I ask a simple question. To what end? Is it for you to get the sympathy of Nigerians? Is it for us to say, hey, yeah, so terrible? Is it for us? Why are they telling us this? Is it for us to be more careful? Is it for us to lose more interest in government? Is it for us to doubt them some more? What is the underlying intention, or for the Auditor General to let us know that he's doing his work? He's been able to unravel some things. Are we the people he should send such information to? So maybe you guys can help me, because sometimes I actually find it a little difficult to understand how this will operate.
Oh, I wish we knew, because I'm also as confused as you are. So it's probably the last one, the Auditor General trying to let Nigerians know that he's doing his work, he's doing his job. But once again, of course, as expected, not very much will be done. After a headline like this.
As expected, not very much would be done. That is, unfortunately, the sad reality that we face as Nigerians. And think about that statement. It's depressing. When now, if we had a system that we know that, wow, that this has been said before we can say Jack, we would get the second part of it, I can live with it. But when the conclusion is that, unfortunately, not much will be done, it's depressing. And when you realize this amount of money and what people are going through. Anyway, let's go on. I think as some other matters arise, we'll be able to take on some
Yes, okay. We see the story of Sunday Adeyemo, also known as Sunday Igboho here. His lawyer actually filed a suit asking the Oyo State High Court in Ibadan to stop hearing the case instituted against him by the federal government. But the court in Oyo State rejected that request, saying that it would go ahead to hear the suit, to hear all the sides regarding this matter. Apparently, what's still happening regarding this case is that Malami has asked for time extension for them to be able to further process all opposition to Igboho's application. And we know that Igboho was actually arrested in Cotonou in Benin Republic after being underground for 19 days. So what this means then is that the court case will still go on, and we're yet to see the end of the legal battles between the federal government of Nigeria versus Sunday Igboho, isn't it?
Yeah, in one sense it is. On the other hand, I'm asking myself a very, very simple question. What am I supposed to take on that as a Nigerian? Am I trying to see justice can be served? What am I trying to get out? My mindset is actually very different on this matter, as you would have realized by now. I'm just asking myself, where do I draw a line between stories, gists, and lives being dealt with on a daily basis? Let me come out with the conclusion that on account of these, there is a strategic move by government to ensure that the lives and properties of every Nigerian, that the freedom of every Nigerian, that the rights of every Nigerian is guaranteed. If that is my take from it, then maybe that's great. But if it's another story, another gist, then really, honestly, at my age, I think I'm tired of those stories.
Okay, so I want us to talk something more nationalistic. It's the PIB. Finally, it was signed or assented by the president, but the reactions to this have been mixed. First of all, we have stories that state governors have been urged to go ahead and challenge that in court. It says the NBA actually advises governors to do that, as well as Ozekome, telling state governors to challenge this in court. First of all, state governors are supposed to meet on this today with the FAAC. So they're saying that lots of stakeholders in this matter have been sidelined, and that, if they couldn't solve this matter, before it was passed, that they can do so in court.
Two things come straight at me. The first is we have people in government that really don't understand why they are there in the first instance. Processes of government is so clear-cut. We have the three arms of government: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. The legislature has a process of law-making. This process is sustained, and fortunately for the governors, they literally control the legislatures. They sleep on duty. They keep quiet. The bill is put before the House. It goes through the first reading, it goes through the second reading, it's committed to the committee, it goes through public hearing, it comes back to line by line before a final decision is made. For goodness sake, I can understand the common man that does not really have as much access to these people, because like the PIB, we all know what the popular opinion was, and that at the end of the day, the lawmakers did what they wanted to do. Now, that's different from the governors, because the lawmakers, over 90% of them are literally in the pockets of the governors. So when your lawmaker was doing this, I want to know how many governors called their lawmakers and presented the position of the state. How many of the governors called their lawmakers and had their own in-house public hearing, so that the articulated position of the state is what is given to the lawmakers, and they go to the chambers, because one of their core functions is that of representation. They say, my people, not me. Nobody cares what your opinion is. My people said on this matter, they stand on this. If that is done, then the governors know that they've done their best. The PIB, I'm from the Niger Delta, like you well know. And I've been in Uyo for a very long time now. Yet I can't remember the government of Akwa Ibom State calling us together on this matter, taking a corporate decision, communicating it to our lawmakers, and say, this is where we stand, okay? At the end of the day, this bill is passed. You want to start this new process or want to go and challenge in court. It's a legal process. It's an allowed process. It's okay. But what it will achieve is what I don't know, and I cannot speculate. So for me, I wish them well on that score. But if we're talking of the PIA, I think it's not PR. You know, in Nigeria, we always say something is on the double, PR, and if you add or that to it, then it means something else. But let's look at the PIA on its surface. If we are to talk about that, don't know what the time is, then we will also look at one or two things concerning that, because I have one or two strong opinions on that.
Oh, you know, like one of our guests said yesterday, it seems like a lot of the people in the National Assembly are representing their political parties and not representing the people who put them there. So
it's a valid observation, and it's a very wrong. When you talk of representation as one of the three core mandates of lawmakers, that representation is that of the people, which is the essence of democracy. Yeah. That's why a lot of money is voted to them to have constituency consultations. So you are coming here to, they are mainly reporters of the minds of the people, and not people who are there to do the biddings of their party. As soon as you step into that, the chambers, red or green, you cease to be partisan. You cease to become, yes.
Yeah, okay, well, because of time, let's quickly move on to Zamfara State. It says on the Daily Trust, fear grips Zamfara communities as new armed group emerges. Mr. Nyeto, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Go ahead. I wanted you to respond to that story.
You see, there is a cycle that we shouldn't, I'm not a security person, but certain things are just generic, so to speak. Once there is a group and there is an enterprise, it's just like in politics. Sooner or later, there's going to be new APC, new PDP, new this, new that, because people look at power and there's always this concept of monkey they walk, baboon they chop. So sooner or later, it started right from heaven, you know. Satan said, look, I'm this important. Why can't I also be the boss? That's just a statement. And you know how you rebelled against God. And it comes down. The Boko Haram or the insurgents or the terrorists and everything, they are never going to be monolithic for two reasons. One is reason of greed. The second is reason of strategy. So I think that we ought to look at how to infiltrate their ranks, just like they are coming back to infiltrate our ranks by way of the so-called repentance. You know, we need to be a few steps ahead. So we need to start to have people in government who understand tact and strategy, and not people whose thinking is just their belly and their pocket. And within that context, anything goes so long as they benefit at the end of the day. They are even willing to allow insurgency to thrive if by so thriving, they can use it as a means of security votes to get a lot more money. So all they think of is money. We need to bring out a new generation of Nigerians that think in terms of the people and service. And this is possible. And unless we understand this narrative that the people in power largely, with all due respect to the few exceptions that we have, are largely thinking of themselves, their pockets, their bellies. And we need to start to evolve and change that narrative. And the time to do this is now. I tell people, go and join a political party if you're a good person. There's something I said, let me end on this note. There's something I said to an Uber driver that brought me back yesterday from the airport. And I told the driver, I said, what do you think of politics? And the driver said, no, Mio, I can't get involved in that. I said, okay, I like the idea that you buy a new car and you don't care who drives the car. Anybody can. He said, no. I said, that's what it is. Government drives you. Government drives your life. and you are so intelligent that you don't care who drives that car. You say, wow, I've never thought of it that way. Oga, not true. I've never ever thought of it that way. This government, they can just do one policy today and there's no Uber again. They can do one policy and then they can even say ladies cannot drive in Nigeria again. Okay, that's true. And I hope Nigerians can wake up to this mindset that government is the driver that drives our lives. And we can no longer allow anybody to just get in there because we think that politics is dirty. Politics is not dirty. And when we do this, we start to think in terms of what governance is all about, service to the people, as different from a private business. A private business thinks of personal profit. Government thinks of general good. And whoever gets into the government must have the concept and the mindset of general good and not personal profit.
Okay.
Today, 90% of government is on personal good and doesn't work that way.
All right, Mr. Nyetok, lastly, I still want us to talk about security. And it's taking a closer look on the headline on the Daily Trust that says, doubts trail surrender of Boko Haram members. I spoke about this extensively yesterday on The Breakfast, but I want us to focus on a part here where Daily Trust interviewed internally displaced persons who were chased out of their homes because of the Boko Haram insurgency. So hearing from them, they said that it's a shame that the government said they want to accept repentant Boko Haram terrorists and reintegrate them into society when themselves have been in IDP camps for years, as much as 7 years. They have not been reintegrated into society. So I don't know how you come in regarding this. Does it seem like, actually, their own words is that the government is being unfair, seems to be pampering these terrorists while, they're still languishing there and suffering in IDP camps?
My sister, if you want to hear the very honest truth from me, I really don't know what the policy of government towards the interest of government towards these terrorists, that they cannot be declared terrorists. Number two, they are using everything to try to, it's like either they are paying them lots of money or they are treating them like they are really endangered species that need to be protected. I've not seen a government that comes hard on the insurgents. And I hate to think that this is an oversight. I think there's something deeper and more fundamental. Look at the people in the camps. These are people who were killed, chased out of their homes, displaced. And then tell me how you will feel when you hear that the man that killed your parents, the man that chased you out of your farm, the man that has made life miserable to you for the past 7 years is being courted, is being brought to kind of reintegrate them into society while you are still abandoned. The victim is abandoned. The aggressor is being appealed at and being appeased. It just doesn't add up. Maybe there's something I'm not seeing. It just doesn't add up.
Our guest yesterday, I want it's still same discussion, but I want you to respond to something that we heard yesterday. The guest that we had spoken with, said that some of these people who are being reintegrated or being or surrendering or being forgiven by the government are people who are victims of failure of government, and so they were kidnapped and forced into terrorism, and so the government cannot necessarily just jail them or punish them, or kill them because they, were forced into terrorism. What's your response to that?
What a brilliant explanation. They must have engaged a consultant to give them that amazing narrative. I think they must have done such thorough research to come to the point where they're able to sift this person from that person. How they arrived at that is mind-boggling. But let me say this, and I want us to think of it very seriously. There are two parts of this terrorism. One is ideology. Two is enterprise. One is ideology. Two is enterprise. Anything that is enterprising, even when we started shooting armed robbers, it did not stop armed robbery because of, and you cannot even compare armed robbery to kidnapping. Armed robbery is hard work, little benefit. Kidnapping is soft touch, so much benefit. As the enterprise. of these terrorists. The second is the ideology. And ideology is so difficult to extract. And I want to see the plan of government through National Orientation Agency to reorientate the minds, to give a counter narrative to this ideology. I'm not saying, but you are coming to tell me, oh, these are the people that were forced. You were there, right? I beg, let's take care of the people that were displaced. Make them happy first. Make the people that go in there to be very, very unattractive. And God of mercy and grace will know how to sift the sheep from the shaft from the wheat amongst them. Those who are innocent, God knows how to get across to them. But you as man, take care of the one that you have direct control over, the IDPs. And don't go and try to convince them that these are the people that were victims and forced into it. Doesn't make sense.
All right, Mr. Yaitok, we thank you very much for your thoughts on Off the Press this morning. Do have a great day.
Thank you, and same to you both.
All right. Stay with us. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we're moving to Today in History and sharing with you things that happened on this day many years ago. I'm going to go back to 2003.
Oh, really?
I believe. Or, well, any of them.
We'll be right back.
What we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
The suspect equally confessed.
A 500 naira they collect them. If you no talk, then go beat you. Now 2,500 they pay.
Welcome once again to The Breakfast here on Plus TV Africa. And now to a little bit of history. I'm going back to 2005, actually. This week we've spoken, a little bit about international collaborations, foreign interests, and some of all of that. And that, includes the Afghanistan issues. And I made mention, of the parts where Russia and China may also, be involved politically, that we may not understand entirely yet. And if you remember also when the crisis in Syria was at its peak, when there were also militants trying to take over the government of Assad, back then there was you could tell that there were interests between two different countries, the United States and Russia. They both had different interests on the same issue. Russia was, of course, supporting Assad. The United States, used every single bit of its, media to try to paint a particular story and said Assad was bombing his people with biological weapons and some of all of that. But of course, it's politics, it's war, So on this day, in 2005, there was the first ever joint military exercise between Russia and China. they somehow, some way, have always had, pretty much similar interests politically and, of course, in, maybe economically also. It was called the Peace Mission, and it was in 2005. It began on this day. The exercise started on the 19th of August and consisted of combined land, sea, and air elements simulating an intervention in a state besieged by terrorist or political turmoil. The force practiced air and naval blockades and amphibious assault and occupying a region. Approximately 8,000 Chinese troops took part, along with 2,000 Russian troops. But listen, the United States was not invited to observe the exercise. They stated the reason is the reason stated was that the exercise was for counterterrorism, and so they were not invited. It was just Russia and China. So that's why I started with the Assad narrative, because of the roles that they played. And if you see a lot of times, there's always some interest. In the United States and South Korea, would always be brothers, in war. Same with France and the UK, all in the same space. But sometimes you would always see that Vladimir Putin always has a totally different perspective with regards world politics.
Yeah, this was interesting. The War Games of 2005, it was a military operation that lasted 8 days. We know, first of all, that China and Russia have, some of the top two, or they are among the top three, largest, military in the world. So they did this military drills for 8 days, basically simulating an imaginary country that was under a terrorist attack and what exactly they would do. China and Russia brought their armed forces together to do those drills. And I think that's great. Maybe the key to, solving our own security threats is, international collaboration with, other armed forces of other countries. Who knows,
No, it's not. It's being able to deal with your issues by yourself. And Afghanistan is a perfect example of why you should be able to sort out your own issues by yourself. I mean, it's pretty simple. I listened to The Daily yesterday. I think it's the podcast yesterday. And so there was a build-up to this. There's a particular reporter who has been she's from Afghanistan, but she's reported for the Washington Post for a couple of years. So there was a daily countdown just before they eventually took Kabul. She was, sharing, voice notes with the Washington Post, trying to get out, of Afghanistan till, yesterday when the podcast was put out. She still was, in Afghanistan, and her life is in danger.
Yeah, lots of reporters are trapped in there.
Yeah, but the point is, one of the things that was mentioned, one of the people that I interviewed, she stated how much corruption, is a key factor in why Afghanistan fell, and how Ghani and his government and every other person who has been in there in the last 20 years has really just been stealing, from Afghanistan and not doing anything to actually boost the army or make the army better or make their defense better. So the U.S. will only help you for as long as it can, and of course benefit for as much as it can. But if you can't help yourself, then you're on your own, absolutely on your own.
Okay, let's go to 2003, where on this day a car bomb actually attacked the United Nations headquarters, and that was in Iraq, and it killed the agency's top envoys and about 21 other employees. It was a very sad day in history, and it wasn't the first time we've seen attacks on humanitarian agencies, aid workers, people who, volunteer their time, to go help out countries like Iraq, even Nigeria, where there are humanitarian crises, and then they end up becoming victims of the situation they stepped in to resolve. So it was a car bomb at the Canal Hotel in Baghdad in Iraq. It killed 22 people, including that United Nations Special Representative, Sergio Verrier de Mello, wounded over 100 people, including a human rights lawyer. That blast targeted the United Nations Assistance Mission in Iraq, which was created just 5 days earlier. After that bombing, about 600 UN staff were withdrawn from Iraq. And it had this ripple effect across humanitarian services across the world.
It's weird how, this happened, 2 years after 9/11 in 2001. And at this time, the United States was already in Iraq carrying out their own war to try to, defeat the, Al-Qaeda and the Taliban and, Osama bin Laden. There was still, of course, the influence and the effect of these terrorist groups at that time. Iraq has not really been in the news lately for some of all these things, but it's just really, really sad how lives need to be lost every now and then.
Yeah, terrible. And it just casts my mind back to 2 years ago when we saw the killing of aid workers here in Nigeria, staff of the Red Cross abducted and killed. It's terrible that these continues to happen. And just a weird situation where you also consider what's happening in Ethiopia, the Tigray region, how humanitarian workers become victims of circumstances, but that's what happened in this day in history in 2005. We'll take a break here, and when we come back, we'll be talking about the situation in Zamfara State, where kidnapped students of the College of Agriculture in Zamfara, we've seen them surface in a video where they're pleading to the federal government to make sure that they are released, and also communicating the wishes of these bandits for a ransom of about 350 million naira. Stay with us.
It's only in Nigeria where special needs kids are not good in arithmetic.
If your lecturer teaches you something in a certain way, and then you find another way of explaining it, you might be penalized for not even putting it down word for word.
And what drives me crazy the most is when you see Loma officials, these ladies in orange suits on the roads, in Lagos roads in particular, sweeping the roads, are now sweeping the sand into the gutter. I mean, were they not trained before they got that job?
It's the adoption of strange laws that we have come and put and twisted religion into it for me that is causing the problem.
There's a lot of change that can be created because half of the children today are homeschooling anyway. Yeah. So can we actually take advantage of what we're having on ground and change the narrative?
It's now you want me to Japan. Are you okay? I didn't go since. It's now you want me to leave? No, because it's about to get better.
Welcome back to The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Let's say hello to our guest, Mr. Nick Agule, Public Affairs Analyst. Good morning, Mr. Agule.
Good morning.
All right.
Thank you for having me this morning.
The story we're talking about today is one that we're too familiar with. Nigerian students abducted. The Boko Haram terrorists or their kidnappers releasing a video with the people abducted, crying for help, stating where exactly they are, what has happened, and any ransom demands. Right now, the students of the College of Agriculture and Animal Sciences in Bakura, who were abducted on Sunday night, were seen in a video asking for 350 million naira ransom within 24 hours, or that they might be killed by these terrorists, and that they were currently at a place where other kidnapped students were buried, maybe because they were not, rescued, or that the ransom demands were not met. So, Mr. Agule, what do you think about the story? And do you think this is something that is becoming tiring with Nigeria's media space, seeing the frequency of these attacks?
Thank you very much for this question. What I think about this story is that the story is very disturbing. First and foremost, let us understand that the president of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, looked the nation in the face directly and told the nation that the school kidnapping that happened, was it in Niger State some months ago, will be the last school kidnapping in Nigeria. And since the president made that statement, we have had several school kidnappings thereafter. One would expect that if a president looks the citizens in the face and makes a commitment, that he actually has the mind to follow through on that commitment. The president does not go to fight bandits or kidnappers himself. But as commander-in-chief, he has commanders that he's giving orders to carry out his intentions. And if those commanders are not delivering on the president's promises to the nation, one will expect the president to take action against those commanders. And we are not seeing that. And because we are not seeing that, kidnappers, bandits, terrorists, all sorts of criminals in Nigeria have become emboldened. And they have the temerity to come to schools, kidnap students, and are demanding for ransom. Okay, now, let us also see that there are two aspects to this. The government's job was to prevent that kidnapping from happening. But now that the kidnapping has happened, what is the government's response? What is the security agencies doing? Because if the security agencies don't collect intelligence, storm the place where the hostages are being held, and give the kidnappers two choices. Either they surrender, or they are killed. We cannot see the end of this kidnapping. If the government allows kidnappers to take students away or anybody away and are demanding ransom, these kidnappers calling, they are using telephone numbers to call. In this age of technology, we can pinpoint, the security agencies can pinpoint exactly the spot where that phone call is being made. And we are not seeing such responses from the Nigerian security agencies to trace where kidnappers are and the hostages, storm the place, and kill them or arrest them if they give themselves up. We are not going to see the end of this kidnapping. So, this is my mind about this story that has broken.
Mr. Agule, is it that we cannot, or we have chosen not to? Because on the Daily Trust, it says there's a daily update on the number of days that students have been in captivity. The Salihu Tanko Islamic School, Tejina, 81 days. Federal Government College, Benin Yuari, 64 days. Bethel Baptist High School students, 46 days. So how, and this is what I need to understand when we continue to have these things happen, is it that the government cannot locate where these people are for 80 days, for 60 days, or the government maybe just doesn't care anymore, is maybe is also having the same fatigue with regards to these kidnappings as other Nigerians are?
Well, it is only the government of Nigeria that can tell us, the citizens, why they cannot locate the locations where kidnappers are holding Nigerian citizens. I think there is a case where there's this school that had toddlers as young as 3 years old. I don't even know if those ones have been released now. That were also taken into captivity. It is for the government to explain to Nigerians why it is unable to deal with this kidnapping. But from my own perspective, looking at this thing from a citizen point of view, I think the government in Nigeria is overwhelmed. They have run out of ideas, and I think as they have even succumbed to these kidnappings. But it is a shame that should happen. Because for many years now, for over a decade, the defense has been taking the lion's share of Nigeria's budget year in, year out. We are committing the biggest allocation in the federal government budget to defense and security. State governments also putting money into security. If we are not getting results from all of these monies that are being spent, then the government has to explain to Nigerians why the situation is not being arrested, but rather getting worse. Ordinarily, we should be spending a lion's share of our budget on education and healthcare and infrastructure, things like that. But we are spending our budget to buy bullets and guns on security, and yet Nigerians are not secured. In Nigeria of today, if you have not yet been kidnapped, it is because the kidnappers have not turned their attention to you. Because if they want to kidnap you, nothing will stop them from kidnapping you. How can we live in a country that has this kind of breakdown in security?
Yeah, Mr. Agule, from what you're saying, you said the government needs to explain to Nigerians why it's taking so long or why it's failing. But Nigerians don't seem to be asking these questions. And I'm going to go back to when we had the first major kidnapping. The whole world almost shut down because, during the Chibok girls kidnapping in 2014, in the previous administration. But with the current administration, we've seen these things happen almost every month. And it doesn't seem like a lot of people care anymore. And so, Mr. Agule, who is the Nigerian government meant to explain to? The National Assembly also is not asking the Nigerian government any questions.
You see, this is what happens. When a situation is not arrested, it becomes normalized. So the killings, literally before now, if armed robbers shot somebody, it's as if, oh wow, the whole place was coming down. Everybody was, breaking the story. Every news outlet breaking the story and all of that. But we have allowed the situation to degenerate to a point now that killings are no longer seen by Nigerians as anything in the extraordinary. When we hear that bandits have kidnapped people, terrorists have killed people, people just feel it's normal. And it is a shame we have got to that point where life means nothing in Nigeria. And this situation needs to be arrested immediately. You talk about the National Assembly. I personally, as a citizen of Nigeria, believe that we don't have a National Assembly. We don't have a National Assembly. This democracy that we copied from the United States has the National Assembly as a check on the executive arm of government. The National Assembly is like a brake pedal in a Ferrari, because the executives have been given a full car like a Ferrari with a throttle. But we also need to have a brake so that if the executive are trying to crash the car, the brake pedal is used. But in Nigeria, the first thing that the executive does is to disable the brake. Disable the brake of that Ferrari. And they are driving the Ferrari without a brake. The result is going to be an accident. And that is where Nigeria is heading. That the executive arm of government ensure that their lackeys were placed in position as leaders of the National Assembly. We have a National Assembly that has oversight function over the executive, and they are not doing their work. Instead of getting the president and charging him to take care of security or they will impeach him, this same National Assembly is currently discussing a bill that will jail for 15 years families of kidnapped victims whom the security have done nothing to release, trying in their own personal effort to try and gather money, pay ransom, and release their people. The National Assembly of Nigeria is making a law where these same families that are already traumatized because their own people are being held hostage will be jailed for 15 years for attempting to pay ransom. Can we say we have a National Assembly? I don't think we have any.
So, Mr. Agule, let's talk about the challenge specifically about, the education sector. And I want to ask you, do you think it's high time that the federal government declares a state of emergency in the education sector in Nigeria?
Did you talk about education sector in Nigeria?
Yes.
Sorry, the line cracked.
Yes, I am asking that in the light of these attacks on schools, especially in the northern part of the country, do you think it's high time that the federal government declares a state of emergency on the education sector?
It is high time. Your question is apt. It is high time that the federal government should declare emergency in many sectors in Nigeria. They need to declare emergency in the security sector, declare emergency in the electricity sector, where a nation that needs 200,000 megawatts of electricity is being given only 4,000, which will never develop the economy. We need a state of emergency in the healthcare sector, where Nigerians are just scavenging and using self-help methods to take care of their health. And we need a state of emergency in the education sector, like you have rightly said. It is unfortunate that the government of Nigeria, in spite of the current threat of kidnapping, have taken no step to secure schools. The government needed to take simple steps. For instance, if the government has a central command center where schools have been given telephone lines, dedicated telephone lines in each school, so that immediately bandits begin to strike that school, the phone calls are made to that central command center, and security is sent there immediately, including air cover. Imagine that if bandits are attacking a school to kidnap students and they see an Air Force jet immediately hovering over them, the bandits will flee. Or if they see the military and the police approaching that place, they will flee. But the government of Nigeria has not taken even simple steps like that, where they can put a communication system in place with every school giving a dedicated phone line to call for security response if their school is under attack. I mean, look at cases where you can kidnap up to 100 kids. The logistics of moving 100 kids away from school, even if you are putting them 30 per bus, that is like 3, 4, 5 buses. How can you move all those children away in such a convoy? Or if it is on bikes, hundreds of bikes, and the security don't know anything about it, or don't chase after the bandits. So the government must stand up to its own responsibility. The Constitution says the main duty of government is to provide security and welfare. And these two items are missing in Nigeria now. And it's high time the government must stand up to its responsibilities.
Mr. Agule, you're speaking about an emergency response system. You're speaking of fighter jets, helicopters, when kidnap situations are going on. That might be, a lot, for the current Nigerian government. But I think, also we might be being dishonest with ourselves if we say that the Nigerian government cannot locate where these, victims are. Before you send a fighter jet, to go help out with, a kidnapping, do you think that, the Nigerian government honestly does not know where these victims are? And now, just to bear in mind that Sheikh Ahmad Gumi, had met with some of these bandits, had met with some of these criminals, time and time again, and, gotten feedback from them back to the Nigerian government. So, while we're talking about sending fighter jets, do you think that it's also possible that they can also be located?
It is very difficult to say that the government cannot locate the bandits. It's very difficult to accept that. Not in these days of technological advancement and information and communication that we have. Let's look at the case. I think this was the case of the kidnapping in Jos. The bandits did not only ask for money, they also asked for motorbikes. And the families of these hapless children provided them motorbikes. The government, if they wanted to know the location of the kidnappers, would have simply installed trackers. You know these trackers that we install in our cars, where you can track the car and know the specific point the car is. If the car is moving, you can see the car moving. Yeah? Government could have installed trackers on those bikes before they were handed over to the kidnappers. And once the bikes were handed over to the kidnappers, the government can pinpoint with precision where those bikes are moving. And they can go to that particular spot, round up the bandits, kill them, or arrest them, depending on their choice. So I personally don't believe that the government is unable to locate the kidnappers. But the reason why the government is not fighting the kidnappers, that is the $1 million question. I cannot answer. Simply cannot answer that question. Because it's difficult to understand why the government allocating the highest chunk of the budget to defense is unable to bring this insecurity under arrest.
All right, I want us to talk about collaboration with the local community regarding, this ending this menace, because it's something that we've been advocating for a long time, that these bandits, no matter what, they have families within these communities. I remember a particular situation where one of these bandits came online to talk about his victories, that's killing and attacking Nigerian military. And he mentioned in that video that before he proceeded with his attack, he first went to evacuate his wives and children who were in the villages, put them in a safe place before he went on to attack. So that means that these bandits, even if they live in the bush, they have family members that live in these communities. So would you say that maybe it's lack of trust in our security agencies that do not let people open up, in terms of information sharing to the security agencies?
You are very correct in the question you have asked. First and foremost, before I even answer the question, we have been discussing that is it impossible, even without the involvement of the communities, for the government a location where these bandits and kidnappers are operating? And we have said it's not. The government can locate these places. The government these people are using telephones to talk. Once you make a call, the GSM companies will tell you exactly the base station that is transmitting that call. They will tell you exactly the location of where that call was making. We talked about trackers and all of that. So even without the involvement of the communities, the government on its own would have been doing their own bit by gathering intelligence, using modern means of communication to locate where these bandits and kidnappers are. But having said that, the involvement of the communities is that, like you rightly said, the communities are not confident. They have lost faith in the government and security agencies. And you will not expect the communities to start giving information to security agents who are not even willing or don't even have the body language that they want to attack the bandits. In some cases, it is the bandits that are even protecting the local communities. We have cases like that. So, depending on the communities, It's not going to help except the government shows sincerity of purpose that convinces the communities that any information supply will be treated in confidence and will be acted upon. So far, the government has not shown the ability that we convince the communities to collaborate and cooperate with the security agencies. And let's look at another story that happened. I think it was yesterday. I was listening to Governor Masari of Katsina State, and he was urging Katsina residents to go and buy arms to come and defend themselves. Can you see the thinking in government circles? First and foremost, Nigerian laws do not approve of citizens to go and arm themselves. But here we have an elected official in the position of a governor saying citizens should break the law to go and arm themselves and fight bandits and kidnapping. That the security of the communities is not the job for the government alone. And Governor Matari is only re-echoing the words of the defense minister. The defense minister of Nigeria himself said that if bandits come and they are shooting one or two bullets, that communities should not run away. They should face them, raise them, and stop them. If these kind of messages are coming from the highest authorities in government, it emboldens the kidnappers and bandits. It tells the kidnappers and bandits that the government has lost it. That the government is incapable to defend the citizens. So the government has turned to the defenseless citizens to defend themselves. And that is what is causing everybody now to come to Nigeria and kidnap. Because kidnapping in Nigeria has become big business. Kidnapping in Nigeria is almost riskless. If you kidnap people, you are almost sure getting a ransom paid to you. See, the security are saying it's not our role alone to attack you. You need to go and save yourself by attacking bandits. Bandits that are armed with AK-47 rifles. Senior government officials are saying armed citizens should go and confront them. Where the army, the air force, the navy, the police, the security agencies collecting humongous money from the budget are sitting and looking. This is unbelievable. It is happening.
So, Mr. Agule, all right, Mr. Agule, we saw a story on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning that says fear grips Zamfara communities as new armed groups emerge. So when I read through the story, I saw that in Zamfara State, there's a new group of terrorists that are preaching to other terrorists to stop kidnapping school children and stop kidnapping, civilians. They're saying that the new focus should be government installations and government officials. I want to get what you think about this new dimension of terrorism in the country.
Well, if that happens, it will be a good thing.
Really?
If the terrorists and bandits and kidnappers decide on their own volition that they want to stop kidnapping school children, other vulnerable people, they want to start kidnapping army generals, they want to start kidnapping governors, they want to start kidnapping members of the National Assembly, and even attempt to kidnap the president himself. I believe if they start doing that, it's going to bring a resolution to kidnapping and banditry and menace that is first. But I doubt if that is going to be possible because these people are well armed. When you see a governor moving, a governor is moving with a battalion of who is a kidnapper that will go and risk his life to kidnap a governor when he has school children who are defenseless in one school, in one remote location, that he can simply go and pack them away and get money. So I will treat that story with a pinch of salt. Don't think the bandits and kidnappers are stupid. So they cannot see soft target and leave the soft target and start facing army generals and governors and presidents and all of that. But let's see what happens. But I take that story with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, well, I don't think we should also describe it as a good thing, regardless of what it means. Mr. Gule, finally, I want you to speak on the silence from the president in the wake of these things. He's just returned from the UK on a medical visit. He also doesn't seem to be saying much. Actually, this week, I believe, the president's son, Yusuf, is getting married. And so one of the papers also reports that the president will be attending the wedding of his son. And that seems to be, painful to say, but it seems to be the current priority of the president himself, while there are Nigerian students that have been in captivity for months. Mr. Gule. I think we have lost Nika Gule there, but I think we should be wrapping up the conversation here. These are not very easy conversations to have, and mostly because of what these mean. And a question, just pretty much, same thing with what I asked yesterday. How come it doesn't seem like it's a bother, it's a big enough issue to anybody? How come there's nobody who's really on his feet every day thinking of, why they have not been able to rescue people who have been in captivity for 80 days, some of them 60, some of them 40-something days. Why? Is nobody really, really bothered, on that level? And it really, really hurts. But we'll take a short break. When we come back, we're talking cancer in children, and we're going to be joined by someone from the Dorcas Cancer Foundation here in the studio on The Breakfast. Stay with us.
For me, I wanted to change that culture. I didn't believe that until you see a white man or you see a foreigner in the kitchen before you can believe that, good food is going to come out of that kitchen.
You can leverage on each other's spaces and, sell. We believe in Nigeria, right? We believe that Nigeria can get better. We, the youth, are the ones that can make it better.
And my products are proudly made in Nigeria.
Made in Nigeria, showing every Tuesday at 10:30 p.m. and repeats on Saturday at 8:30 a.m.
businesses in Africa can be very challenging. In Nigeria, it is particularly intimidating, and successful builders have learned how to navigate a hostile environment to unlock opportunities. But one major challenge businesses face is how to filter through the noise and identify where their ideal customers exist. Get insight and practical steps from industry players and captains of industries. Hear success stories to help you make informed decisions as you scale your business in Nigeria. Watch Business Insights at this time on Plus TV Africa.
The way your baby's presenting, we have to rush you in. And my partner at the time was like, "You going to cut her? Are you going to cut her? Is it going to leave a scar?" And I said, "Am I a belly dancer? What is the problem here?"
No, I'm vulnerable about the future of the children, the future of mine and the future of the generation of my children.
I want to have nude pictures taken. Of you? Yes,
Yeah,
but
we
without
had
showing my private parts. I want to put it in my front room. And they said, "You can't do that. People will be embarrassed when they came into your house." I said, "Well, it's my body and it's my front room."
All the things that we do, what is the purpose of it?
I just realized that I was more trusting before I was 6.
So many women, they just feel like I have to cook for my husband, I have to breastfeed my children, I have to pick them from school.
Because society expects
Then you
them
go
to.
home and you cry and you stop your career, you can't do anything, then you blame everybody. You took that choice.
Welcome once again to the Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. We're joined this morning by Dr. Adedayo Joseph. She's the founder of Dorcas Cancer Foundation. We're going to be speaking on cancer in children. It's not a conversation that we have a lot here in Nigeria because, well, not very many people get to talk about these things. And so we've invited her to share her thoughts on some of these very big issues that, are not spoken about a lot. Good morning, Dr.
Joseph, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So it's not a very popular conversation because a lot of people expect cancer to be, maybe breast cancer, cervical cancer, lung cancer, and some of all of that, which happens with, older, presumably older persons. Can you share with us, about cancer in children? What are the most common incidents that you've experienced?
Yeah, so like you said, it's not a very popular conversation because nobody wants to hear the words cancer and child in the same sentence. So that's understandable. But cancer does happen in children. The most common cancer you find in children is leukemia, which is cancer of the blood. But then there are so many others. There's retinoblastoma, which is from the retina of the eye. There are cancers in the kidneys, the muscles, the bones. So there's a whole plethora of cancers that are specific to children and to young adults, adolescents and young adults. Cancer in children is not as common as cancer in adults, but it is often treatable, often curable. They have very, very good survival rates. And so it is more tragic when you see those children dying, knowing fully well that with the right treatment, they could easily have survived.
So I want us to begin first, just generally regarding cancer, the myths concerning cancer in Nigeria. You hear people say, oh, cancer, really, I thought that was a big man or a white man disease. Can you help us dispel some of the myths that, surround this disease?
Well, to start with, when you say a big man disease, the thing about it is that unless you have unlimited funds, cancer is one of the easiest ways to quickly go into bankruptcy because cancer treatment is expensive anywhere in the world. And so no matter how big that person is one of the most catastrophic things that can happen to anyone's finances. And I have seen it personally over and over again, and I've seen families go into ruin, sell everything that they have, which is how the Dorcas Foundation even came to be to start with, because you see parents who sell all of their life savings, they sell all their properties, sell their car, they don't even have a place to live anymore because they're trying to help their child survive. But the chances of that child's survival are tanked already because the child came with advanced disease. So no matter what they do, the prognosis was bad from the start. And so until we get to the point where we're detecting it early, that's always going to happen. But regarding the myths in Nigeria, there are many of them. I don't even know where to begin with that. The one thing I will address is two things I will address. Number one is that the treatment for cancer is surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. There is no diet that is going to cure it. There is no vitamin infusion that is going to cure it. All of those things are lies, and I can say it anywhere. There is no data to support it. The second thing I will talk about is nutrition. Because one of the first questions I get asked by anyone who is diagnosed with cancer is, what can I eat? Because people come to them and tell them, don't take this, don't take that, don't eat this, don't eat that. And so you have a malnourished, undernourished person coming into treatment, which is going to be very taxing to their system. So if I had to pick two myths to address, those would be the two.
Okay, so talking about kids and cancer screening, where really lies the challenge?
You don't screen children for cancer because, like I said, again, it's not as common. Even in adults, there are only a few cancers you screen for if you compare it to the number of cancers that can happen. Because the logic behind screening is that there has to be a significant incidence for you to be able to make that screening justifiable. For you to spend the money to do a mammogram for 10,000 women.
How much does it cost, first of all, the cancer screening for one child?
We don't screen children for cancer. So that's
even the challenge because they now come with the advanced stage. Is that what you're saying?
You don't screen children for cancer because the cancers are not as common as in adults, number one. Number two is that the screening tests are not 100% reliable.
Oh, wow.
For you to do a screening test, it has to be reproducible and it has to be reliable. Okay, so I can always say that if I check PSA and PSA is elevated, something is wrong with this prostate. You have to have something like that that is consistent for you to be able to use it as a screening test. And we don't have anything like that in children. The closest we have is what we have is for the cancer called retinoblastoma, which is a cancer that occurs in the retina of the eye. And there's a simple check you can do for that, which is you check the eyes to make sure that the part of the eye that is supposed to be white remains white, or red remains red. So that's the closest you can come to what you call screening for cancer in children. What children need is a regular health check, right? With somebody who is a pediatrician, who is qualified to treat children, and who can tell that this is not malaria or typhoid, and know that this child needs to be referred for expert attention. What happens is that the child comes, they treat for malaria and typhoid, and they do that repeatedly over and over again in multiple different centers. And then by the time a real diagnosis is reached, it's been 6 months and the disease has spread.
All right. So there's a lot of expectations, with regards to the causes of cancer, from how it's been described, behavioral habits, food that like you mentioned, the food that we consume, bad oil, bad drugs, smoking, some of all of that. So, how would you explain to a parent, whose child is down with cancer that hasn't been able to, is not old enough to have lived, with those habits?
So there are two groups, and I like that you separated adults from children. Children don't have these risk factors. They haven't been exposed to these environmental factors long enough for them to be relevant. With children, it's mostly genetic. And when I say genetic, I don't mean hereditary necessarily. I mean that it is in the genes. So it is something that starts from the level of the gene while the baby is even sometimes in the womb. And it has nothing to, and that's very important to me to emphasize, it has nothing to do with what the mother ate or drank, or you understand what I'm saying. Now, that's not to say that a woman who is pregnant should not make healthy choices. But often those bad choices will show up immediately with a child who is underweight or who is not healthy at birth. It's not cancer that is the result of an unhealthy pregnancy. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, that's different from adults. With adults, smoking, nutrition, diet, lifestyle, all of those things are certainly risk factors, but not for children. And that's something that is very important to address, because many parents feel a lot of guilt and wonder if it's something they did or didn't do. And we always make that very clear that it was nothing like that. It's like you have an assembly line and you're bringing out sliced bread. Every now and then, one slice is going to be abnormal, okay? And what happens in cancer is that the systems that should pick out that abnormal slice fail, and they allow it to escape into the system. And then that abnormal cell begins to reproduce. So that's what happens. It's not anything that they did or didn't do.
Okay, so before now, you went on to say that maybe a child is sick or you get diagnosed for malaria and typhoid, and 6 months in, they present with advanced stage of cancer. You said something like that. So, but what are the signs of cancer in children?
There are many different cancers. So it's difficult to say there's one specific sign.
Okay, for the most common cancer,
you know,
which is leukemia.
but for the, okay, let's talk about leukemia, for example, which is one of the things that we see a lot, is there is repeated infections. So the child keeps getting sick and sick and sick.
First of all, for people who don't understand, help us break down what is leukemia and then go ahead to talk about it.
That's going to take us a long time. So leukemia is cancer of the blood, and what happens with it is that there is an abnormal proliferation of white blood cells, which is the immune system. And because the abnormal cells are proliferating, they take over the bone marrow. They starve and push out the other cells. So that child is anemic, that child is predisposed to infection, that child is predisposed to bruising and bleeding and all of that. And so that's a very, very, very simplified version of what happens in leukemia. But then one of the easiest ways, one of the commonest ways they present is that they will have repeated illnesses and infections. And so they get treated for an acute infection over and over and over again. And nobody, takes a step back to look again to figure out why is this child being sick all the time. And then, send them. And the reason that happens is because many times they're not being seen by a pediatrician. They're being seen by somebody who is maybe a GP, who treats adults, who treats children, who treats everyone. And so that index of suspicion for something else is often lacking.
Okay. All right, let's then talk about the Dorcas Foundation. What exactly have you been into since it started?
So the Dorcas Cancer Foundation is 5 years old. And when the foundation started, it was with the intention to support parents financially to pay for treatment. But then, like I said, what we found is that there's no point paying millions for treatment when the child is already coming with a stage 4 disease and is going to not live anyway. And so as we've gone on, we've had to take a step back to figure out other ways to approach the problem beyond just funding treatment. And so now we've attacked early detection. We've done this Look Again campaign, which is training primary healthcare workers and community healthcare professionals across the states. And we've trained over 1,000 people now. And the point of the Look Again campaign is teaching them to look for other signs and understanding that at the point where you see this, you need to refer this child for expert assessment. The truth about it is that not every child in Nigeria can come to a pediatrician every time that they're sick. We don't even have enough pediatricians in the country. So if we can train the people at the community level to know when to refer for expert assessment, that is one step to improve early detection. We've also taken on training so for example, we don't have any pediatric radiation oncologists in Nigeria. So we recently held a program called the PIDROC where we're, trying to build capacity for radiation. We had experts from all over the world training our experts on the ground here to do that. And so we've done many programs like that. We started the Pediatric Cancer Access Program, where funders and donors pay directly to the providers. One of the problems, challenges you'll find is that people are nervous to give money to a foundation, to an NGO, because they want to know how their money was spent. And while we are very open with our books and all of that, just to remove that little bit of nervousness, we say, okay, don't give the money to Dorcas Foundation. Pay it to the hospital. Pay it to the pharmaceutical company. They will supply the drugs directly. The hospital will perform the surgery. So don't give us the money. Pay it to the hospital, and we just get the child and bring that child in for their treatment. So what PICAP does is that it eliminates the delays in treatment. The child gets treated on credit. The surgery is done. The chemo is given. And then we figure out how to find a donor to pay for the treatment after that. But the child gets treated. So those are some of the things that we've done to try to address the issues that we've discovered beyond just funding treatment.
Okay, so I saw a report by the World Health Organization that said that in higher income countries, the rate of treatment and cure for cancer in children is 80%. But when you come to low and middle income countries, like in the third world, you find situations where the rate of cure for children who have cancer is 15 to 45%. What can we do to change this?
Yeah, so I mean, it's exactly what I was saying, that it's very tragic, because that most of the time these children can survive. I tell people all the time that I attend conferences on pediatric cancer, and they don't talk about survival. What they talk about is side effects, quality of life, because survival is taken for granted. It is over here that there's still, that these children are still dying. And so these are the things that we can do to address them. Early detection is very important. Access to care is very important. Treatment funding is very important.
Okay, well, of course, a better healthcare system, I believe, because, Nigerians can't necessarily rely on foundations, all through. Could you share with us, you said, if a child, is going to be helped, the treatment is paid for even before donor comes. So how long does the treatment take on the average?
It depends. So surgery is a one-day procedure. I mean, of course, the child is going to be in hospital after to recover. So it depends on the treatment you're talking about. With radiation, I'm a radiation oncologist. We have treatments that are lasting 6 weeks or 2 months at a time, because they're taking daily treatments over a couple of weeks. Chemotherapy can last for months, at different intervals. So it depends on what kind of treatment. But I always tell people, so what I tell my patients in the clinic is this: for the next 2 years of your life, this is the journey you're going to be on, at the very minimum. And when you're talking about metastatic disease, it's really most of the time for the rest of their life, So it's not something, it's like, and I tell people, it's like hypertension. Once you become hypertensive, you're hypertensive for the rest of your life. And that's what happens with cancer that is metastatic. And even when it's not metastatic, it's going to take quite a bit of time, dedication, emotional and financial toll on the family.
It's really, it's a tough one to deal with, actually.
Yes, just quickly, I wanted to ask, I've heard about the Nigeria Cancer Control Plan and things like that. How would you really quantify the government's, input in trying to find a way to solve this menace of cancer in the country, especially with regards to children? Is the government doing enough, and what more can they do?
This is a topic that I'm very passionate about, because I find that a lot of the time, it's very easy to have these conversations where you sit down and you complain about the government and all of that. And I tell people that, listen, you see, even in the best countries, so if you take the US, for example, there are organizations that are committed to lobbying for cancer patients. Their entire focus of work, the entire scope of work, is lobbying the policymakers to make policies that help cancer patients. How do I expect a minister of finance, for example, he doesn't know anything about cancer. If I don't bring it to his table and talk to him about it and tell him what the problems are with the solutions, it's not his job to think of them for me. So instead of talking about what government has done, I tell people, what have you done? How many people have you talked to about it? How many letters have you written? Do you know who your legislators are? Have you approached them to talk about it? Have you asked for research funding? What has everybody done about it? I'm sorry. So that's how I see it. We can sit down here and criticize government until next tomorrow, but the truth about it is that the average person on the street has done nothing or not enough. And that's where we need to start from.
So what do we need to do as Nigerians regarding?
So let's start by knowing what the problems are. So one of the things that I learned in this journey is that initially I used to go and talk a lot about the problems. I'll say, these are the challenges. And then, and this is something I say all the time, there are very few people you're going to talk to say children are having cancer, they're dying, and they don't want to do anything. They do want to do something. So they're going to ask you, what can I do? And then you're stuck because you've come only with the problems and no solutions. So what we need to do is understand what the problems are and come up with the solutions, come up with ideas for the solutions, and then tell them that, okay, these are possible solutions. These are the ways that the government can help. Here is the truth. There are very few countries in the world where government is funding cancer treatment in full. It's very expensive. There are other things that can be done. So you can encourage private industry to invest in cancer treatment by giving them tax breaks. Every private company that donates to cancer treatment will get a whatever percentage tax break. Anybody who is importing equipment for cancer treatment will not pay importation fees. Those are the kind of things that government can do. But we can't expect them to solve the entire solution,
okay.
Finally,
solve the entire problem.
In 10 seconds, does the health insurance also cover cancer treatment?
No. Right now, cancer coverage by health insurance in Nigeria is maybe 1%. I think cancer to me, yes, is very low. It's next to nothing, and that's another thing that government can help with, because the insurance companies themselves have to stay in business.
All right. I wish we had enough time to talk about how COVID-19 affects cancer patients, because the fact we've seen is that it affects them at a higher risk, but I guess this is where we can draw the line here. Thank you very much, Dr. Adedayo Joseph from the Dorcas County Foundation.
Thank you for having me.
And this is where we will be saying goodbye on a Thursday. Thanks for staying with us. If you missed out on these conversations, you want to catch up, remember it's at PlusTvAfrica on Facebook and Instagram, same with our YouTube channel, along with at PlusTvAfrica Lifestyle. I am Osao Gie Ogbawa.
And I am Annetta Felix, saying bye-bye.
Politics has helped shape the decision of the polity, from conspiracy theories to good old-fashioned comic politics.
These are the results of tomorrow's election. Okay, you have it already, Abi.
I am not hungry. If I need appointment, all I need to do is to start praising government.
Plus, politics will fill the polls of the country, from friends to frenemies, even strange bedfellows, to clones and stooges. We go beyond the rhetorics and the drama to analyze the story behind the story.
Let anybody come and say. The moment we stop having charlatans occupy political offices, we will curtail hate speech.
Plus Politics, not just another political show. It's about putting you, the citizens, in the know.
we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
The suspect equally confessed.
A 500 naira they collect am. If you no talk, dem go beat you. Na 2,500 they pay.
Thanks for joining us on Plus News Brief. I am Osaogi Ogbonwa. The students abducted on Sunday night from the College of Agriculture and Animal Science in Zamfara State risk being killed. Their kidnappers have released a video demanding a 350 million naira ransom in 24 hours, or else the students will die. The blindfolded students and staff of the school can be seen in the video sitting and squatting and pleading that the money be paid. 20 people comprising 15 students, 4 staff and a driver were kidnapped while the bandits are now holding them. The 3 people were killed during the abduction. Students of Benue State origins will be evacuated from the University of Jos immediately. Benue State Governor Samuel Otom has given the directive due to the tension in Jos and some parts of Plateau State. The tension was caused by the killing of more than 20 travelers last Saturday. That killing made the Plateau State government impose curfews in 3 local government areas and the University of Jos also to suspend examinations. And some investors want the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission to prosecute a young man who they accuse of duping them of hundreds of millions of naira. They marched through the streets of Port Harcourt to draw attention to what they claim is a case of fraudulent forex trading. And here's the story. We'll bring you that story in subsequent bulletins. Workers' unions at the Ekiti State University are accusing the institution's management of fraud. The Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities, the Non-Academic Staff Union, and the National Association of Academic Technicians all allege an attempt to cover up a breach on the institution's portal in 2018. Still in the news, remember you're watching News Brief on Plus TV Africa. Students of the University of Lagos can now get back on campus and get ready for the second semester examinations, which begin on August the 26th. The exams will end on September the 26th, according to a circular from the school. The students were asked to leave campus 6 weeks ago following a COVID-19 scare, and they have been receiving online lectures since then. Unilag had made a staggered arrangement for students with registered bed spaces to resume in the hostels. And still talking COVID-19, Enugu State has finalized arrangements for the storage, management and movement of its second batch of COVID vaccines, according to the Executive Secretary of the state's Primary Healthcare Development Agency, Dr. George Ugu. All that is left is to receive the vaccines. Part of the facilities put in place are cold chain freezers which can chill up to minus 50 degrees Celsius. In addition, the state is investing in the retraining of vaccination workers in local governments. Dr. Ugu says the government wants to ensure nothing is left to chance. The Ondo State Governor, Rotimi Akeredolu, has sworn in Honorable Justice Williams Akintoroye as the acting Chief Judge of the state. The governor has also charged him to live up to the dictates of his calling. Justice Akintoroye was appointed upon retirement of former Chief Judge Justice Olutoyin Akeredolu, who reached the retirement age of 65.
Short of quintessential conduct from you, we are nothing, we expect nothing else from you, and I believe you will live up to standard. Because the judiciary, as you all know, should stand as the bulwark of support for the downtrodden. It should represent hope for all and sundry, both the rich and the poor, the high and the low.
The other two arms of government, the executive and the legislative arms, the judiciary, under my watch, will form a synergy with you. Ondo State must progress. The sun must keep shining brighter and brighter on a daily basis. We can only achieve this when there is camaraderie or amity between the three arms.
To stories in other parts of Africa, 6 persons have died following heavy rainfall in northern Sudan's River Nile state over the past few days. More than 55,000 people across the country have been affected by heavy rains and flooding, along with a total of 6,270 homes that have been destroyed. An unconfirmed number of public infrastructure and farmlands have also been affected, according to counting by the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Heavy rains and flooding have so far been reported in 11 of 18 Sudanese states. And a statement from military prosecutors in Burkina Faso has stated that former President Blaise Compaoré will be tried from October 11 for the murder of Thomas Sankara, who was ousted in a 1987 coup. Compaoré and 12 others are facing charges of attacking state security, complicity in murder, and complicity in the concealment of corpses. Prosecutors say proceedings from the military tribunal will be held in public in the capital, Ouagadougou. One of those accused alongside Compaoré is General Gilbert Diendéré, who is already serving a 20-year sentence in Burkina Faso for masterminding a plot in 2015. Uganda has announced a polio emergency after an outbreak of the virus in the country. In a statement on Tuesday, the health minister blamed the polio outbreak on the COVID-19 pandemic, during which resources were diverted from polio vaccination projects. The ministry had heightened surveillance, searching for all polio cases in health facilities. They have also launched a house-to-house national polio immunization campaign from October to December 2021, targeting children of 5 years and below. And now outside Africa, the Taliban has said that they will respect the rights of women in Afghanistan within the framework of Islamic law. A spokesperson for the group, Zabihullah Mujahid, said this in their first news conference since they took control of the country on Sunday. Mujahid also said women will be free to work, but gave little details about the other rules and restrictions. Rights groups fear women's freedoms could be eroded under the Taliban, as they introduced or supported punishments in line with the Sharia law when they controlled Afghanistan between 1996 and 2001. And British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has promised that Britain will do everything it can to avert a humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. Addressing Parliament on Wednesday, Johnson also ruled out an inquiry into British conduct in the nation, saying most questions had already been addressed.
Mr. Speaker, I know that members across the House share my concern about the situation in Afghanistan, the issues it raises for our own security, and the fears of many remaining in that country, especially women and children. The sacrifice in Afghanistan is seared into our national consciousness, with 150,000 people serving there from across the length and breadth of the United Kingdom, including a number of members on all sides of the House whose voices will be particularly important today. And so it's absolutely right. I can assure him that I will, and as I will be saying in just a few moments, we will be supporting, doing everything we can to support those who have helped the UK mission in Afghanistan and investing everything that we can to support the wider area around Afghanistan and to do everything we can to avert a humanitarian crisis.
And to business news now. The House of Representatives Committee on Finance has invited the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, the Nigerian Customs Service and the Budget Office of the Federation. They are to appear on Monday to explain issues surrounding the collection and appropriation of the Nigerian Shippers Council, especially a 2% ports development levy. The committee issued the summons in Abuja on Tuesday at the ongoing public hearing of the 2022-2024 Medium-Term Expenditure Framework and Fiscal Strategy paper. The Executive Secretary of the Shippers Council, Emmanuel Jime, had lamented that the main source of the Council's revenue for 3.1 billion naira was collected by the customs and sent to the Accountant General's office. Chairman of the committee, James Faleke, has now directed the Secretariat to invite the concerned parties. And following events of bargain hunters, the equities market on the Nigerian Exchange Limited rebounded from the loss recorded on Monday, with investors gaining 23.04 billion naira as the market capitalization hit 20.61 trillion naira. The all-share index rose by 0.11% to 39,550.36 basis points at the end of trading on the floor of the exchange on Tuesday, from 39,505.40 basis points recorded the previous day. The trading volume dropped by 21.60% as investors exchanged 110.77 million shares valued at 3.08 billion naira in 3,305 deals, compared to 141.28 million shares worth 1.64 billion naira traded in 3,393 deals on Monday. Market sentiment, as measured by market breadth, was neutral, as the gainers and losers were 16 each. Still in business, oil prices steadied on Wednesday after 4 days of declines. This comes as investors remain worried about the outlook for fuel demand, as the use of rail, air and other forms of transport remained constrained amid surging COVID-19 cases worldwide. Brent crude was up 70 cents or 1% at $69.73 a barrel. U.S. oil gained 54 cents, and financial markets overall are turning sour in response to the Delta variant's progress, softer U.S. economic data, and a solemn reflection on the Afghanistan crisis. To entertainment news now, the trial of the Grammy-winning U.S. singer R. Kelly is set to begin at the U.S. federal court in New York on Wednesday. The R&B star is accused of racketeering, sexual abuse, and bribery, charges which he has denied. Some of the allegations made against the singer, full name Robert Sylvester Kelly, date back more than 2 decades. If he is convicted on all counts, he could face 10 years to life in prison. Kelly and members of his entourage are accused of recruiting women and underage girls to engage in illegal sexual activity with the singer. The stories go back to the start of his career in the 1990s, with many centering around alleged predatory pursuit of teenage girls. The 54-year-old is currently facing multiple state and federal charges in the United States, with accusations including sexual assault, abuse of a minor, making indecent images of minors, racketeering, and obstruction of justice. He has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. And also an entertainment comedian, Sean Locke, has died from cancer at the age of 58. His agent has confirmed. The comedy panel show favorite, Locke was a team captain on the series 8 out of 10 Cats, hosted by Jimmy Carr. He appeared on the first 18 series opposite team captains including Jason Manford and John Richardson. Locke exited the show in 2015 and was replaced by Rob Beckett at the beginning of the series 19. He also appeared on Q1, The Last Leg, Have I Got News for You, and The Big Fat Quiz of the Year. He appeared on the first 18 series. Opposite team captains, including Jason Manford and John Richardson. In a statement, fellow comedian Lee Mack, a close friend of Locke's, described the news of his death as heartbreaking. To sports news now. Jose Mourinho's Roma have completed the signing of Tammy Abraham from Chelsea for a reported fee of £34 million. Arsenal had been interested in Tammy, but Chelsea opted to sell the striker to a foreign club. The 23-year-old England international, who was Chelsea's joint top scorer last season with 12 goals in all competitions, fell out of favour at Stamford Bridge as his first-team appearances became limited following the arrival of Thomas Tuchel as replacement for Frank Lampard. As part of the deal, Chelsea has a £68 million buyback option on the academy graduate, which can be exercised in the summer of 2023. Abraham will swap the number 9 shirt of Chelsea for that of Roma. Still in sports, the tissue paper used by Lionel Messi during his farewell news conference for former club Barcelona to wipe his emotions has been auctioned off for a cool $1 million. The Argentine, who now wears number 30 at PSG, the same number he wore when he made his professional debut for Barcelona back in 2004, cried during the farewell speech, and his wife Antonella handed him a tissue. After the emotional news conference, an anonymous person obtained the used tissue and posted an online ad stating the tissue would be offered for purchase for an inflated price. Just a few days ago, the auction information for the tissue was published on an international e-commerce platform. The tissue was valued at $1 million. According to the individual, the tissue included Messi's genetic DNA that might be used to clone a football player similar to him. And that's the news brief. For more, please follow us at PlusTvAfrica on Facebook and Instagram. And do subscribe to our YouTube channel at PlusTvAfrica and PlusTvAfrica Lifestyle. I am Osaugie Ogboa. Thanks for watching.
Hello and welcome. It's Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime. Nimasa This Week is brought to you by the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. Statutorily mandated to ensure that there is regulation and promotion of matters affecting our waters. NIMASA bears responsibility for search and rescue, shipping development, and ship registration.
NIMASA This Week, the voice of maritime, showing on this channel.